Valerie said she may be late. So it looks like we have the rest of council here. And so, and there is the mayor. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Kim?
Okay, we're recording and the meeting is started.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much to our council secretary, Kim.
We are recording and the meeting is started.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Linda Ratchford, City Council President here in Newcastle. And joining me for this meeting are other council people. That's Councilperson Russell Smith, Councilperson Michael Platt, and Councilperson Suzanne Souter, Councilperson Valerie Leary expects to join us later on in the evening. Also, we have our City Administrator, Bill Barthel, our building official, Jeff Bergstrom. We also have our mayor, Mike Carana, and our city attorney, Dan Lasco, our chief of police, Rick McKay. If someone has some background noise, if they could stop, please. Thank you. We have Council Secretary Kim Bergmuller, and also our recorder Kathy Burke, and I also think this evening we're going to have our city engineer Dave Athey joining us. So, did I get everyone?
Madam President, hey David, could you text Mark and let him know that he's not on mute? It's Mark Ziegler.
And also we have our on phone we have.
Hey, so do me a favor, turn off the light up over here, the overhead light.
Excuse me, Mr. Ziegler, could you mute, please? If you're not talking, if you could mute. Also we have our city clerk. I expect Brian Whitaker and Janet Carlin. So welcome everyone. We're going to get started. We have a full agenda this evening. The first thing we have is the minutes from January 12th, 2021. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes for January 12th.
I'll second it.
So
be it.
In a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the minutes are approved. We're going to move on to our treasurer's report. Ms. Carlin? Are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm here now. Thank you.
Okay, would you give us the treasurer's report?
Yes, this is the unaudited report as treasurer's report as of January 31st, 2021. The total unrestricted funds, $5,647,686.54. Total restricted funds, $916,121.10. Total cash in the accounts, $6,563,807.64.
Thank you. Anything you want to point out?
No, we're right on schedule. The percentage that you look at on your budget report is higher than what it has been in the last few years, but that is consistent with what we talked about last month, that the budgeted figures are lower than what they were last year at this time, but we've gotten more funds in than what the budgeted figures are. So we're really right on schedule.
Any questions for the treasurer?
Madam President.
Mayor has a question.
Good evening, Janet. Question. In the news recently, it's been reported that 40% of the people that are unemployed have been out of work for 6 months or longer. It looks like the revenues are rolling in. Do you see any concern or correlation between perhaps, are there any unpaid taxes that is at a rate that would concern you, or does everything look like it's rolling in as it should be? because some people are going to be stressed because of their lack of employment. You see any issues there?
I do not at this time. As I mentioned last month, as we go forward and start looking at our budgeted figures for next year, I think we need to be, very cognizant of those types of things. But right now, we're doing very well. And I thank you for your question.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President.
I do have a motion to. approve-
Madam
Yes,
Sorry to interrupt. I just got a quick question. I
sure.
noticed a lot of red, like where the franchise fees are, the contributions from MSC appropriations. There are a couple of the bigger ones. What are the reasons for that? Or the franchise fees? Does
Well,
not-
actually, they are right on target with what we have experienced in the last years. Trustees appropriation is coming in, and MSC will be coming in. It's, they come in on a quarterly basis. So actually, they are consistent with, if you would look at your January 2020 report, budgeted report, you will see that those percentages are consistent with this year.
Okay, I actually looked for it. I couldn't find it, so that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
You're
Any
very
other
welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, motion to approve the treasurer's report unaudited.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, we have approved the treasurer's report as presented unaudited. Thank you, Ms. Carlin.
Thank you, Ben.
Next item in the agenda are reports from the city administrator and staff.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I have two items for council this evening. An update, Jeff and I had a Zoom meeting with Delmarva last month. One was to review the Delaware Street project, and the other was to discuss with them. If council recalls, they had mentioned that they had a 5-year plan, I believe back in last December, when we were at that point still talking about the Delaware Street project. But so Jeff and I met with them to follow up on that as well. Now, the good news in this is that in phase 2, they are talking about starting the next phase in the second quarter of this year. I don't have an exact start date yet, other than sometime in the second quarter. And that project will, at least from our understanding, will include the Strand from Delaware Street, Harmony Street from the Strand to East 2nd, and including East 2nd, West 4th Street from William Street to Delaware Street, and Harmony from 4th to 6th. Mr. Ziegler, could you mute yourself, please? Thank you. So I think that's really good news from the perspective that, they are moving forward. It is an aggressive agenda, but they will be, getting started in a timely manner. From that, after Jeff and I met with those folks, I notified MSC to let them know that we in fact had that meeting. I got them the schedule that Delmarva had presented to us, and in speaking to Ms. Patone, basically hoping that they would be able to duplicate the same thing we did on Delaware Street in those streets we just mentioned, and then in the final other 3 phases that we talked about. Basically, the response I got back from Ms. Patone was that because of a number of various reasons, including the estimated costs for this phase and the current projects that they are currently working on, that their staff has recommended that they do not pursue this project. That was from an email I received from Ms. Patone. And so my only comment on that is, then I will say the numbers are significant. If the city were to pay for Verizon, Comcast, and for MSC to put their wiring and cables and electric, et cetera, underground, the indication was that they had what they had committed to Delaware Street at this point was all that they could do at this point. So what I would say to council is that, I would hope that we can pursue this dialogue a little bit further. And maybe just not, we're not interested in pursuing the project at this time, but maybe the city, along with MSC in a more formal meeting, can actually explore some of the things we might be able to do. I'm a little disappointed that was the response. However, that's kind of where we are. So I know council's got a meeting set up on the 16th with MSC to talk about their charter. That might be a good time to maybe at least ask some questions concerning this project in the next few phases. The other thing I just wanted to mention to council that we did receive back from the state, if you recall, we had, Mr. Lasco and I had spoken to folks at the state about the second phase of the pier. We did hear back from the state confirming that, and I'll just read from what they sent in the MOU, that if the city designs the floating dock, but ultimately determines not to proceed with construction of the floating dock, any such funds not utilized for the design of the floating dock shall be repaid to the department within 30 days. Basically, they've agreed that we can use what we need to go out and get the second phase engineered, and that if council at that time decides not to proceed with moving forward, that we would just return the non-used funds. So unless council has an objection, I'm going to move forward, sign the MOU, and proceed with trying to get bids, trying to get engineering done, and then move forward with bids.
It sounds like a good path to me. Any other conversation on that? That's what we discussed for a couple of meetings, and the question is whether or not the state would fund that. And it sounds like they will.
Yeah, that sounds like where we have landed on the project. So seems like we ought to go ahead.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, and you have anything else, Mr. Rathel?
No, at this point, Madam President, I don't have anything. Jeff, do you have anything that you need to add at this point?
Nope, things are proceeding normally.
Okay, Chief. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam President.
I was just going to see if there are any questions for Mr. Bergstrom from council. Okay, then we'll turn it over to Chief. Chief McCabe.
Thank you, and good evening. I don't have anything specific. I know I submitted a pretty lengthy annual report that I had promised for this meeting, so I figured I'd leave it open for questions if council's had a chance to digest all that information. If not, I'm certainly available, at your convenience if you have questions one-on-one. And the report itself is due to be posted on the police department's website shortly, so the public can have access to it as well. And if you notice, the January report looks a little different than years past. That's kind of the method we're looking to employ, getting the information out. So if there's any questions, I'm certainly available for.
Chief, this is President Ratchford. One of the questions is, before you did kind of a quality of life issues listing kind of with some descriptions on that, or do you intend to do that going forward? Or I think it kind of helps understand things.
Right. So the crime map program we were using is not going to be available shortly. We were more or less piggybacking off of the county police. They were helping us get access to that. So I'm waiting to find a different way to put that information together with using the programs that we have. But yes, that is the goal, because the quality of life crimes don't change from obviously from database to database. It's just a matter of how I can put it into a into a report that makes sense.
The other comment I want to make, I was really pleased with what was in your annual report in terms of the training and the response time and, just what you do to take care of our community, because your work is so important. So thank you for all the community engagement. Any questions from council or the mayor?
Madam President, I would just say to the chief, I think the charts, the tables, the graphs are a really great and meaningful way to represent the data. Very easy to understand and kind of, really does kind of reinforce the old saying that a picture says 1,000 words. So it's really great. So my compliments. Thank you.
This is President Retchford, and I think it would also be very helpful. I like that pie chart. It shows you why people are having traffic accidents. And so I think that's very helpful, not only for the police and the government, but also the citizens.
It does send a powerful message. There's a consistent pattern there for sure.
So I think these are good too.
I hope the weekly publishes this.
I can certainly make sure they get a copy, and again, it'll be on our website as well. We're really plugging that website.
Have a new website, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the chief? Going to move on to council communications. Was there anything council would like to share?
I would, if President Ratchford, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
I'd just like to announce that I'll be running for a second term. And it's been an honor to serve the people of Newcastle and to work with the fine people on the current council and the city staff. However, I know that there is more work to be done, and I'm asking the people of Newcastle to once again allow me to serve them. Secondly, I want to say how sorry I am that President Ratchford is not seeking a second term, or not a second term, another term. Few know how hard the job of council president is. She has kept on top of current issues and as well as anticipating future needs. And she has provided solid direction for council. She has served well, and the council will miss her leadership. Thank you, President Ratchford.
Thank you very much for your hard work, and thanks for your comments. I appreciate that. I also failed to mention Ms. Leary has joined us. So if there's anything else anyone else would like to say.
Madam President, I have a few things.
Okay.
I don't know if this would come under the COVID relief or not, but I brought this up before, and as we see the COVID numbers are dropping, schools are starting to get back in. Most public places are up to 50, 60% occupancy. And I think it's time that we take a real hard look at meeting somewhere in person. Like one of my thoughts was just today, these teachers have learned to Zoom from their classrooms, their basement, from wherever they're at. They can do it from their cars if they want to. I don't see why we can't meet at Newcastle Middle, and whoever wants to Zoom in on the meeting, let them Zoom in on the meeting. But if they want to attend in person, let them attend in person. I mean, we could be sitting at a table at Newcastle Middle with our computers in front of us. They got plenty of Wi-Fi. They're already Zooming in and out. And I think it's time we get back in touch with the people that we work for.
That seems like a good idea to me if we can do it safely.
Well, I mean, that gymnasium, or I'm sorry, the auditorium probably holds, 300 or 400 people. We get on the average 20, 25 people to meet. And if they choose to Zoom, we're still set up that same way. I mean, I'm not a tech geek, but even if it pays our IT guy to set something up, I mean, yeah, maybe we will be sitting in front of our computers in front of an audience of 20 in that auditorium. But I think I think it's time to start giving them the options.
Can we explore that before the next meeting, Mr. Barthel? From a technical point of view?
Yeah, from a technical point of view, nothing has changed really from day one. I think we said early on last March that, in fact, we had investigated bringing in a company to come in, not realizing, or early on in the process, not realizing at that time that we were going to go exclusively to Zoom. And we certainly can go back and do that. We have to make ourselves, like you say, available to the rest of the public through that venue. I'm not confident that we would be able to basically do that on our own with our own technology and our own technological capabilities, if you will. But we certainly can go back and look at what, what we can broadcast and how we would set that up. I mean, those of you who attended the Chiefs event at a couple months ago, with the separation, we certainly can do that. We can create that separation, and we can bring people in to be sure that we are separate. But to answer your question directly, I mean, sure, we can look at it. I think the cost per meeting, if I recall then, was around $1,100, but that was some time ago. I could be wrong. But again, I mean, we could do it. I would just advocate setting it up with a third party.
Well, and I'm just thinking, if they're Zooming from their classrooms teaching, I don't know why the 6 of us, 8 of us can't sit at a table and Zoom out of their auditorium. That's, I mean, to me, I'm not a tech guy, so I'm not going to argue that point. That's just what I'm going to throw out there to everybody. But I think it's time to get back in public. I really do. I mean, and I think the governor is agreeing with that, with the limits that he's raising. So, maybe we should take the lead.
I think this is President Rush. I think we should explore what the options are and what requirements we have, because we basically have to have a dual meeting, which certainly teachers are engaging in, and we need to make sure that it's also, what the public, it suits the public needs. So we'll hear back from the city administrator then. Any other topics?
I've got 2 more actually. As I walk around town, and I don't do quite as much, and I've been in contact with Councilman Smith, and I know he's working hard on it, so I don't really want to beat up the subject, but the state can't produce historic Newcastle. When you get your car registered, you get your driver's license. From what I understand, business licenses and professional licenses are coming out. It says historic new CAS-DE. Janet, could you, or Kim, could you put that up for me, please? Yeah, if you take notice in the center, that's our address right now. That's how we're being identified throughout the world. And I know a lot of work went into it. I know it's going to take a lot of work to correct it, but I think it's something we should be really pushing hard. I mean, you get pulled over in, Ohio. What does that mean to somebody? And I agree with what Mr. Smith wanted to accomplish, but I think it's something that we didn't see. It was supposed to be a voluntary action, and it wasn't a voluntary action. It was actually a mandate from the post office. My mortgage changed, my title on my house changed. I didn't want that, but once it went to the post office, it happened. And being a voluntary, I voted for it, and then I actually realized I made a mistake. I apologize to Councilman Salter for not supporting her, but I think this really has to be looked at.
Mr. Platt, as you know, I've been in contact with the director of DMV, and we've been playing telephone tag, unfortunately. And I've left messages in the last 2 days, and she's promised to see what she can do from the digital side of things to correct that. I don't know that it's appearing everywhere. You brought up the issue of state vehicle registration, and so I followed up on that. And she's supposed to get back to me. I left another message today. I don't know what she's been able to accomplish, but
my understanding also, I talked to the Board of Professional Regulations today that issue licenses, and like my funeral director license may come out like that.
Well, maybe
it's a statewide problem. I mean, and I understand you spoke to President Ratchford this morning, and it could just be a field issue, but it just, if it's a mistake, we got to get it corrected. That's all I'm saying. And I think the sooner the better. And if you need help contacting people, I will be more than happy to help you contact people. Like I said, I talk to people about professional services day, and they're kind of on the same boat. We created this mess.
Well, I talked to Janice Simpler, the director of DMV, and she said she would look into it. And I'm sure the programmers set up their program for the the biggest named community they had at the time. Now they have a bigger one. And so they ought to see what they can do to solve that, what other kind of abbreviation they can use rather than just truncating the abbreviation at the end. So I'm just saying it seems to be an open question right now. If you want to suggest renaming the town, then I'm certainly open to your suggestion if you want to do that. But right now, it seems like an open question.
Right, okay, I won't argue, I'm just bringing it up because it's brought up to me. I mean, and like I said, and actually, when I renewed my car, it came back Van Dyke Village, City of Newcastle, 19720.
Really?
My
That-
registration
many-
says
that-
Van Dyke Village,
That many letters?
those two lines.
If they can
It's just-
spare, if they can spare you 2 lines, they can spare historic Newcastle 2
Well,
lines.
then,
Thank you for that information.
right, I mean, it may just be because it's registered as a subdivision. You know, a lot
I
of
don't-
times, like when people live, like say in Heritage Park, it's Heritage Park, Wilmington, Delaware, or whatever it
Yeah,
may be.
I
And like I said, I'm not that guy. I'm just bringing things up that I heard.
okay. That's
I
great.
would, this is President Ratcher, I would encourage you to work on this one offline and bring it back to us for the two of you to have discussion. We need, so we can move on. Any other comments, Mr. Platt?
I'd just like to wish everybody a happy Black History Month. I know we got a lot of history down in Buttonwood and Boothurst, and I think we should all just take a few minutes and just kind of sit back and reflect on the history of our country. That's all I have, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. That's a very important message. We certainly have a lot of inroads in our community in terms of Black history and a lot of things that we can point to. Certainly being part of the Harriet Tubman Byway, and then all the things our local citizens have done. And certainly tonight we're honoring one local citizen that we all cared for very much deeply, and certainly sorry that Chief Petty is passed away. So thank you. Anything else from council? Anyone else?
This is Suzanne Sauter. I just want to go back briefly to Mr. Platt's point about the so-called optional mailing address. It's gotten into these big mass mailing programs that a lot of businesses use. And I think that's why it's spreading. Because once it gets into those systems, then that's what everybody uses. And I don't know how that impacts with the state. And that may be something to discuss with Mr. Smith, with the head of Department of Motor Vehicles.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from council, or go to the mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Tonight, as President Ratchford alluded to, tonight we, the council and I, will publicly acknowledge the life and the body of work of former Newcastle Police Chief Eugene Petty. Let me personally extend my condolences to his wife and former council member Teal, and to the entire Petty family. We are grateful for all that the chief did during his tenure on the police department staff, and thankful to the family for sharing him with us for all those years. Council members, we're also going to be asked to approve tonight the appointment of Connie Reese to the Board of Elections. And we appreciate her willingness to volunteer and her time for this important task. Elections matter, and we need community leaders who are known to be trusted, thoughtful, and fair. And Connie meets, of course, all those very important qualifications. So let me close this point out by publicly thanking Marianne Caven also for her years of service leading this board. We appreciate her service and the time she dedicated to helping our elections run smoothly. I'm happy to report, as was referenced earlier, the COVID-related hospitalizations across the state are now under 300. However, I want to remind everybody that hospital leaders in the state explain that the difference between being hospitalized today is very different from what they experienced 8 to 10 months ago. Medical teams have learned more about the virus and its mutations, how to treat and assist people. But having said that, COVID patients who are hospitalized today, unfortunately, are typically in much more dire situations than many of those who were hospitalized earlier last year. So I encourage all residents to stay diligent. Don't forget about being tested. I think sometimes we're all focused on the next thing, and right now, so that would be vaccinations, and we're all hopeful and anxious and see the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, but testing still remains very important, especially if you have been in places where there have been larger family gatherings, or you've done some travel. Please remember to be tested. And also let me compliment the city staff for keeping the website fresh with testing sites. I went on there and have gone on a couple times and have found places close to my office. So I just would encourage people to check back there regularly. The state is, and we is in the process of distributing. At this point, I think the last number that I saw was they've got about 130,000 doses of both the Moderna and the Pfizer product combined. More are on the way. They've administered about 107 or 110,000. I can't remember. I know there's a website that has the most recent numbers. And I've attached to the information that I've provided all of you tonight a notice from the White House that went out earlier today that said greater distribution and quantities of the vaccines are on their way. They'll be using the community health centers in addition to all the different pharmacies around the state that are available for those purposes. However, the pharmacies, I might add, though, will be all by appointment only. Let me also remind everybody that taking care of sidewalks and walkways when snow and icy conditions persist, and that necessitates maintenance, and we're all kind of in this together, businesses and residents. So please take that into consideration as we get some rough weather. And believe it or not, we'll kind of round the corner in a few weeks, and we'll see a greater numbers of people in our parks walking our city streets. And also just would ask everybody to remain safe and vigilant. We will be several months, many months before we have enough people vaccinated out there to move around with all the freedoms that we all enjoy and want and are anxious for. But it's just going to take a while for everyone to be a bit more patient as we roll all of that out. So with that, I have no other comments. So thank you very much. I don't know if you want to do the resolution honoring the life of Chief Petty now, or you want to do that at a different time?
You're muted, Linda. Linda, you're muted.
So I was going to go through, I had a couple of things and then public comments in case someone wanted to say something in public comments, and then go right to the resolution.
That's fine.
So,
Great. Very good. Thank you.
Quickly, the only thing I wanted to mention is, well, two things. One, to thank the employees for taking care of our roads during some of the recent snow weather, and also picking up the garbage on those days. So thank you for that hard work. Also want to remind everyone, tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock is a workshop on the Newcastle, City of Newcastle Transportation Plan. It's going to be very interactive, and we frequently hear about transportation as council members. And so here's your opportunity to give your ideas. So there's information on our website, on the Facebook, and you can also go to the Will Mapco website. And if you can't attend, you can also provide any comments directly there. So at this point, I am going to open it up to public comments. And I will ask Mr. Smith to time. I do remind you 3 minutes, so everyone has a chance to talk. You're welcome to talk about any topic or ask any question that you would like. We appreciate your participation. Is anyone, and to do that, just raise your hand through the app. Our Council Secretary, Kim Berger, will be looking for that, or *9 if you're on the telephone. So is anyone that would like to make a comment or ask a question?
I have Philip Gross.
Okay, Mr. Gross, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Barthel, quick question. The $1,100 rough dollars to broadcast the meeting from wherever the remote location is that a monthly estimate or for a whole year?
As I said, Mr. Gross, I'm trying to recollect going back to late March when we were trying to scramble to, before we actually went to the Zoom venue that we're currently in. So I say that because I also said it's my recollect that it was around 1,100 a meeting. Now, what I don't recall was if that was the first meeting and then the cost would go down because we had, we'd already had an experience setting it up and what have you. I can't say that for sure, but I remember it being somewhere around, might have been 800 to 1,100 per meeting is what it was.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And I'll wait to hear the rest. Second, as far as the flag, Councilman Smith, I still feel strongly that whatever flags or logo that you choose, it definitely should include the wording, Historic Newcastle, City of Newcastle, whatever you choose. Moving on to the next thing, there was a comment, letter to the editor that Councilperson Leary made to the Weekly about a month ago. I feel it was inappropriate. It called me out inappropriately and without any merit or facts. And I basically think her putting in there suggesting how people should vote and then signing it, penning it, Councilperson Leary. I just feel just like Councilman Smith used the platform to push another agenda, his running for election. I don't think that's what the body of a position on council should be used for pushing people one way or another with an election. So I just feel that was made in poor taste and unethical and borders really election tampering, which stay tuned, we'll hear more on that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment?
I don't have any other hands raised.
Okay. All right, well then we're going to go to the next agenda topic. And we were all going to do this with certainly with heavy hearts, but certainly in recognition of all the great things that Chief Petty did for the city and for the police department. I do have a motion to consider a resolution honoring the life of retired Newcastle City Police Chief Eugene Petty.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I'm going to read the resolution. This is Resolution 2021-04. It's a resolution honoring the life of retired Newcastle Police Chief Eugene C. Petty, April 21, 1927 to January 26, 2021. Whereas the city of Newcastle was deeply saddened by the death of one of its most beloved citizens, former Newcastle City Police Chief Eugene Petty, who passed away on Tuesday, January 26, 21 at the age of 93. And whereas Chief Petty served his country and the city of Newcastle in many ways throughout his life through his military service and as a Newcastle City police officer starting in 1963 and ultimately retiring as the city's first African-American police chief in 1983. Through his work with the Buttonwood United Methodist Church and the Buttonwood Colored School Community Center and Museum, he demonstrated in countless ways his commitment to the city and its legacy. Both the chief and his wife, Teal Petty, attended the Buttonwood School as children and were instrumental in its revitalization. And whereas Chief Petty was a lifetime member of a number of organizations, including the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Delaware State Chiefs of Police, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement, and was a Boy Scout leader for Troop 505 for 25 years. In 2015, Chief Petty received the Newark Chapter NAACP Lifetime Community Certificate at the 19th Annual Freedom Fund Awards. And whereas Chief Petty is remembered by his fellow officers as being ahead of his time and a bridge builder between the police and the community, he believed an officer's greatest weapon was not a gun, but their ability to communicate. He is survived by his beloved wife, Teal Petty, a former Newcastle City Council person, his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, as well as extended family and numerous friends. Chief Petty will be long remembered in the history of Newcastle and will hold a special place in the hearts of his family, friends, and indeed by all who knew him. Now therefore be it hereby proclaimed that the mayor and members of the city council desire to publicly acknowledge the life and legacy of Eugene C. Petty and his service to the city of Newcastle, and direct this resolution to be spread upon the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 city council meeting, and a copy be forwarded to the family he so cherished. And this would be for all the elected officers, council and mayor, and also our city clerk, Brian Whitaker, and our treasurer, Janet Clarkson. So all those in favor for a council vote, we have to vote on this as a council, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Um,
Madam President,
Okay, pardon?
Madam President,
Okay.
if I could, it'd be great to hear from Chief McCabe if you're willing to yield him a minute or two from his perspective.
Certainly, I'd like to hear from him. I was going to pass the,
Sorry.
we're going to pass the resolution first, and then we'll
right.
turn. I would like to hear from Chief McCabe, and then also if there's any family members in the audience. So all those in favor of the resolution, this is council needs to vote, honoring the life of a retired Chief of Police Petty, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Opposed. So it's passed unanimously, of course. And so I will ask at this point the chief to say something, and then if there's anyone in the family that would like to come in. Chief?
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that. You know, over the last week or so, in preparing for some of the stuff that we've posted on Facebook, I had an opportunity to reach out and talk to as many officers that worked in the past, some of the old chiefs, some friends, and you know, there was a common denominator with Chief. He was a remarkable human being who just was he genuinely cared about community and community service. And it's no accident that our not new, but old mantra is to protect and serve. A lot of police departments get lost in messages. Our goal is to work with our community and to protect and to serve, and that is something that he believed in. He was a remarkable person to talk to up until the end. He remained incredibly sharp, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say this because I know Consuela shared this with us. He was very proud of his service, very proud of his police service, which is refreshing to hear. I just can only hope that it helps regenerate another, generation of police officers. But one thing that this job takes from you is every now and then there's something that happened in your career that maybe isn't resolved the way you want it resolved, and he was part of that. He was part of a cold case homicide that he really wanted to clear, and we wanted very badly to do that for him. We've brought people in to help us work this old case. And we've talked to him, and he was glad to hear that we were working this, and he was very responsive to our questions, and he was very insightful. So, he meant a lot to us. And one of the I'll end with this to say that one of the most remarkable comments I heard was from my predecessor, Jamie Rogers. You know that he was a Newcastle kid through and through. And when I said, "Can you help me?" I reached back to East Chief to see, did he have any impact on you? As the chief, the impact that he had on Jamie was as a kid. He said, you knew when Chief Petty was the chief, you knew who the chief of Newcastle was. And that means a lot. He meant what he said, and he said what he meant. And I talked to a news journal reporter about him recently, and she asked me if he gave any advice. And I said, he wasn't about advice, but he was about asking questions, and he was incredibly attentive to the answers. And he was aware, and he wanted us to remain active in our communities and active in the police community as chiefs. He made every IACP meeting in his career and after his career. That has to be a record. So I appreciate the opportunity. It was an honor to know a man like Gene Petty. He's a rare breed, and This community is incredibly lucky to have a man like that serve. So thank you again for the opportunity. And we certainly, all of our thoughts are with his family because we certainly know them as well.
And that's something his family also has a legacy, and certainly his wife, who is a former council person. One of the things that really stands out is the quote about the fact that he thought the most important tool was his ability to communicate, not his weapon. And I think that's carried forward for many years since then. And I think it's who we are. We care about our community and we want to make things right. And so that's, I think, a very important legacy. Anyone else want to make a comment? Are any of the family members online with us this evening?
I don't see any family members. There's one computer that I can't tell who it is, but I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, well, we in their group, they have lots to deal with at home. So we will certainly get this all signed for them and then presented. So, but thank you to Chief Petty for his service to the city. So we're going to go to the next item, which is a Delaware Street update. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Barthel.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. As you and I had discussed, there were some questions, or you had, in our discussions, you had indicated that there might be some questions concerning the final product on Delaware Street, loading zones, that type of thing. We also never really finalized, if council recalls, we had talked about removing the stop sign at 4th Street, and we had indicated that we would take it to the T2 people, and we did. And they came back with their recommendations. So what I did was I invited Mr. Athey to join us this evening so that he could review the final product on the, as I said, with the street, the update on the sign, and then any questions council may have, concerning what we're going to end up doing on Delaware Street. So with your permission, I'll just ask Dave to step up. Dave?
I was waiting for permission.
Hello, Mr. Athey. Also, if you could, I guess, when you're ready, have a shared screen on the graphics.
Yeah,
Right.
thank
Kim,
you.
yeah,
I thought Kim was going to
Kim
put that
does.
up. Very good. Thank you. It's good evening, everybody. Pleasure as always to talk in front of the Newcastle Council. Real quick, the kind of history of where we got here. I'm sure you all remember in September 2019, we had actually 3 council meetings, talked about the street widths, bump outs, the extent of the work change, but then little by little, those conversations got more into the crosswalks and then ultimately the traffic control, signage, striping, things of that nature. In October, same year, there were several other meetings more on the staff level. Mr. Barthel, Mr. Bergstrom, I know the chief was involved. Layla Hamroon, the historic architect that works with HAC. And that was a further engagement with Matt Carter, that I think everybody knows who he is, at the T-Squared Center at the university. And we came back in November 12 of 2019 with a preliminary, more or less the plan that you see in front of you right now. But there were a couple things. The plan generally was replicating what is already there or was already there. But we did do a few things, came out of all those other meetings I mentioned a moment ago. A little bit of roadway striping, kind of that, what I always call the sea of asphalt there at where Market and Second come in. Putting a loading zone at what I often call the top of the hill at 3rd Street, where none exists today. A better loading zone down around 2nd Street. I know there is a little bit of signage, but that's been a problem area for quite some time. And then what I think one of the issues we'll probably talk about here in a moment is relocating the stop sign from 4th Street to 3rd Street. At that meeting that night, at council's request, we actually made a few other changes which are reflected in the plan before you here. One of them, we're going kind of northbound or westbound, depending on how you want to do it, away from the river at 2nd Street. The original sign, I think, said oncoming traffic does not stop. And that was the requested to make that change. And Kim is more or less putting her cursor there as oncoming traffic has the right of way. We did have at the 2 loading zones initially some white curbing, and I think that was causing some confusion. And there's no great way to do a temporary loading zone to allow people to be there some of the time, but not the others. But at council's request, we eliminated the white curbing. And then one of the major changes is we were originally showing what are called typically piano keys for the crosswalks, and at council's request, we changed those to just the 2 parallel lines that you see right now. And I believe all that was memorialized in a resolution that evening. Through all those discussions, though, we did get into some, if you will, bigger picture signage. And that's when the issue, Mr. Barthel brought it up a moment ago, of what about if the stop sign at 4th Street is moved to 3rd, what do you do about the outbound stop sign? And the thought at this time is that that would be removed. We did have the T-Squared Center weigh in on that, and they agreed with us under the feeling that, and I know we've talked about this at some of the other meetings, that if you have a stop sign literally at every street, people are just going to speed between the stop signs. So it's too many stop signs can actually be contradictory to a message of trying to slow vehicles down. They did make a suggestion, though, or a recommendation that there should be a cross traffic does not stop sign put at the stop sign there at 4th Street to alert drivers. The T2 assessment, otherwise I thought the messages that the city has were really pretty good on the overall signage. They did have some observations about some of the sign dimensions. Like everything else, signs get updated, the standards periodically, and some of the signs, I guess, maybe have a little bit of age to them. Might be too small. They may not have the proper reflectivity. What are called breakaway designs don't always exist. You basically want a sign to give if a car hits it, and some of the signs do not have that breakaway base. But again, the messages they all thought T-Squared thought was pretty good. So to the best of my I know the project kind of got stalled a little bit, but the plan that Kim has in front of you here still shows that stop sign at 3rd Street, which I think everybody felt pretty strongly about. And at this point, would certainly recommend, once that sign is removed, to also remove the one outbound at 4th Street. That would be really weird to have it stopped in one direction, but not the other. I guess to Mr. Barthel's point is, when does that happen? And he and I kind of had an offline on, if you make these changes while the Delaware Street project is still underway, does that kind of obscure the change, or do you do it at a separate time to really give it a lot more visibility? I would certainly appreciate the chief's suggestions or recommendations, or Mr. Bergstrom for that matter, on anytime you put a new sign up or move a sign, you really want to give the public a little bit of notice. I don't know if that's just some flags on the signs, or the chief maybe have an officer out there kind of monitoring the situation for the first several days or even a week or two. But I think that's something we hadn't really talked about at the council floor yet, is how do we notify the public of these changes, and how do we make sure they really kind of get it as the signs are being moved.
Mr. Athey, can I interrupt you for one moment?
I was about to say, that was really all I was going to say, so be certainly happy to answer questions.
Perhaps I missed it, but did we actually decide whether or not to remove the signs at 4th Street? Because I know I was not in favor of that.
We, by default, certainly decided to move the one from 4th to 3rd that is shown on this plan, because this plan, for all intents and purposes, was approved at that November 12 meeting. That's an excellent question. I don't know if it actually was like a vote. Mr. Barthel, maybe you can help me out with that one.
Yeah, no, I can. And as I said, it was a discussion that council had. There had been some disagreement that it should be removed. And what we said at that time, as I initially said, was we would go to the T-Squared guys and see what their recommendation was. And their recommendation is and that's what you basically have been waiting for. And so their recommendation is to remove the sign, as Dave just said, and he was just about to ask the chief, had some questions for the chief, but no, you have not. If council likes to weigh in and vote against what the safety people are suggesting, then, certainly you can do that, but no, you have not voted against it.
Okay.
Well,
Or for it, for that
Martel,
matter.
this is Suzanne Souter. I have two questions. Did the T-squared people know that 4th Street is a bike route, a designated route for bikes?
Yeah, they
It's the
came down
main
and,
route, because that's going to be a problem. If the bikes are coming out 4th Street and there's no stop sign on Delaware Street, that's going to be a problem. And so you're saying T-squared was not aware of that?
no, I didn't say that. I said, I believe T-squared was aware of all of the conditions at that time because it had made a bike route. We talked about this last December or January. And when they looked at it through the spring. And that's when they came back with their recommendation. But again, that's, so, that's.
Okay,
They're
and I have
aware.
another issue. Since I live on West 4th Street and go through that intersection frequently, it is with cars parked along Delaware Street in front of Bridgewater's and the shops there. It is extremely difficult to see if cars are coming down outbound on Delaware Street. It's not so bad to see cars coming into town, but it can be, depends on the size of the vehicles. If you have a large SUV parked in front of Bridgewater's, if you're coming out 4th Street, you cannot see if there are cars coming. And if there's a large SUV parked to your left, if you're sitting at that intersection in front of the Bridgewater house, again, you cannot see if cars are coming. So I agree with Ms. Leary. I do not agree with taking down that stop sign for both for drivers and for cyclists.
And I'd just like to point out that we just added a stop sign on Harmony Street. So there's a stop sign at every corner on Harmony Street. So it's pretty inconsistent to say, well, let's take the one out on 4th Street. We can have one on 4th and 3rd, I think, and still have a decent traffic flow. With all due respect to T-squared, we've already done it and it seems to be working. So I don't see why we want to do something different one block away.
Well, and as I said, we went to them to ask them their opinion because there seemed to be, obviously there was some agreement or disagreement that, council couldn't at that point come to a conclusion. You kicked it over to us to take to them. This is what they do and this is what they're recommending. And if council decides that they don't want to go with those recommendations, that's certainly your prerogative. We're just reporting back the information we received.
Okay, so what do we need to do?
Well, I think the next question, Mr. Smith, there was a question that would have been given to the chief. I don't know, Madam President, if you still want the chief to weigh in at this point.
Please. Chief?
Sure. So two things. First, with the Harmony Street and Delaware Street comparison, Harmony Street is one way. So it's not necessarily, we're talking about Delaware Street, which is going to have a lot more traffic. This whole concept started with the notion of concerns over pedestrian traffic in the area of 3rd and Delaware, and the lack of a stop sign that would, one, slow traffic or calm traffic, and then two, alert drivers to a change in pattern. As you got to 3rd and Delaware, you're going to notice that things they're going to widen. The expectation was there's going to be more pedestrian traffic, and then you have the offset intersection. So the whole point behind that stop sign was stop, calm, and then alert. After that discussion came up, some research that was developed that said, when you have stop signs at every intersection, it counters the calming desire. People will get frustrated and they'll just speed up in between the two stop signs. So that's where this whole notion came from. Again, this is a council decision, but I will say that it's probably not the best analogy to compare Delaware Street to Harmony Street. Harmony Street is now a consistent move and stop in one direction. Delaware Street would have been, and this was just what we're hearing about the calming effects. Delaware Street, as people travel that more, are going to be frustrated with all the stops. that was the notion behind this. Apparently, that's what T-Square agreed. But again, this is, this is your choice. Oh, and the other part of this is if you make a decision to do this, I don't know that we could put an officer there, but I do think that we could probably make arrangements to have signboards placed somewhere where it alerts, drivers that there's a traffic pattern change. That's consistently what is done. So I can reach out to DelDOT if that is something that, you desire.
I certainly
President.
agree with the need for a stop sign at Third Street. It's just a matter of whether we need to look to lose one at Fourth Street. So
Well, Madam President, I see both sides of this argument, but we've got our chief telling us exactly what the safety people say. That's what they do for a living. And we spend money on these surveys and then we don't follow the recommendations. You can always put another stop sign up if it doesn't work. I agree with the chief, you get aggravated driving down the street. Most people run stop signs anyhow. It's not that, it's a bad situation driving all around, but I see both sides, but I think it's a smart move putting it down to Third Street. Just as the chief said, it's a calming effect. It lets you know you're coming in to a tourist type area.
This is Suzanne Satter. I have no objection to the stop sign at Third Street, and I agree with the reasons for putting it there. I simply do not think we should remove the stop sign at Fourth Street. What's going to be our test case? Somebody getting seriously injured or killed at that intersection before we put it back?
Or no accidents. It's just, we pay for these surveys and then we don't listen. We waste city money.
Well, this might be one of the first ones that I will disagree with the survey. Usually I disagree. I agree with most of them, but driving Fourth Street as I do all the time, and it is one way, and it is even at the stop sign, you're kind of looking around to see what's coming. So I find it interesting that people speed between stop signs. Like, is there even enough room to enough street to speed between stop signs here? But I don't know. I'm still of mind that I agree with the one at Third, as Ms. Souter does, but I also agree that Fourth Street should be left there.
Can we make a motion tonight to keep the stop sign at Fourth Street as well as adding the one at Third Street?
If you want to make that motion, the other thing you might want to consider, and would there be a problem where we just added the one at Third Street and then observed how traffic moved? Or are you planning on
Add Third
moving?
Street and leave Fourth Street where it is.
Since there sounds like 3 people want it to remain. So that would make it remain. But the question is, it's the kind of thing you could trial. Are we planning on moving the stop signs, or could we just buy more stop signs? We probably need new ones anyway. Then try it and then revisit this topic after everything's put in.
Again, what's our trial? What's our basis? And you're right, Mike, Mr. Platt, nothing may ever happen, but the risk, based upon some of the factors that Mr. Souter has said, and, me driving that street quite a bit, what's the test case? A bicyclist gets hit? Somebody.
Yes, I don't know, but I walk it probably 3 days a week. That's part of my loop, and
I drive it, but.
Right, and I'm just saying, just walking it, I don't see the problem. And like I said, that's 30 seconds out of a day. I'm crossing the street. That's all. That's just an observation. Like, as I said, I go down 2nd Street, I walk down the South, and I come up 4th. So, it's one of those things, like I said, and you say we agree with studies. We had the study at 6 in Delaware where they wanted to put a 4-way stop in. And the engineer said, do it. And we said, no. I just don't understand. I don't understand why we waste the money on studies if we're not going to follow them.
Well, you don't have to follow a study. It's why you have them, but you don't have to follow them. So.
The mayor has a comment.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, as somebody who lived at 3rd and Delaware for 10 years and observed an awful lot. My own view would be the following. I think that I don't know, and I'm not going to ask anybody to opine on this, but sometimes studies can be very narrow. Sometimes they can be very broad. I'm going to guess that this was pretty narrow, and that's not a suggestion of quality or anything of the like. But here's my point. What I observed after living at the corner of 3rd and Delaware for almost 10 years was that, actually longer than 10 years, was that there was an awful lot of fast movement between the stop sign at 4th as it progressed into the center of the city, much faster than one would assume would be safe. And part of that's because of the visual nature of the distance between 3rd and 2nd Street opening back up as wide as it is. And I think people having a false sense of safety as they drive, and the distances between the parked cars, because it's not very narrow, of course, it's very wide at that point. But there were people who were crossing at 3rd Street, and it's an awkward place. So I think the idea of a stop sign at 3rd is actually a pretty good idea. I also believe that the notion of having a walkable community and having a stop sign at 4th Street also makes sense. It's also good for also someone who had an interest in a retail store in that block. More traffic calming as cars come in, come out from parallel parking, helps both for pedestrian safety and also for the commercial businesses that we want to encourage to locate in our community. So for all those reasons, I would encourage you to, the traffic calming measures are good. I'm going to guess that the study did not take into effect commerce, bicycling, maybe the walkable community and the comprehensive plan pieces that we've got together. Maybe it didn't, maybe it did, but for those reasons, I think it's probably a good idea to keep the stop sign at 4th and add one at 3rd. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I guess based on the comments, it seems like there's a lot of concern about removing the one at 4th Street, regardless of the recommendation, in terms of the concern about the safety. I think that I think we should go with what T Squared and the chief said would be. I mean, they are the experts, but due to these concerns, my suggestion would just add the one at 3rd Street, and we can always revisit and see how it goes from there. Other thoughts?
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yes.
I think that's a good place to start. And then if there are problems from the speeding between 4th and 3rd, as you said, we can revisit, but for now we'd have both.
T Squared was also going to do a survey of speeds, but my understanding, Mr. Rathel, that's not going to happen because I think.
No, they were looking for data from us, and we've just not had the ability or at this point to, through the department, with the COVID issues we've had and with some of the other things that we've been dealing with, we haven't been able to put that data together. So they're waiting for us to, to provide that to them, and it's our intentions to do that.
I do have one other question. That was we agreed before, we're going to try to avoid painting curbs. Is that correct, Chief? If we can, when we do it in most cases, or
I mean, with the proper signage, we'll give it a whirl. If we, write a ticket and it goes to court and we're successful, then, we'll share that information. If we run into an issue where, it becomes a prosecutability issue, then obviously we'll share that as well.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Athey?
I just want to bring up the issue of painting on the street in front of the courthouse and the area. Do we need the arrows? Do we need the stripe and the yellow stripe in the middle of the road? There's also been a suggestion of a bicycle route on the streets, and we talked about that. I went back and talked to the gentleman who had suggested that and asked that it be more compatible with our signage. And there really is no need for one of those street markers on Delaware Street, because we'll have a sign pointing out the bike station and restrooms. We don't need a sign on the street. So I think that eliminates one marking of the pavement in that area. I've also talked to this gentleman and tried to make his suggestions more compatible with our branding system. And I think we have reached an agreement on that. And Kim, can you show that?
Mr. Smith, and Madam President, just to let you know, I got a text from Dave. Evidently, he had a power failure in Newark. I don't know if Jeff is still here either, but there was a power failure, and he's going to call in. So he did not, unfortunately, hear those questions. That may be him calling back in.
Yeah, he's coming in.
Mr. Athey? Mr. Bergstrom, did you make it back in?
No, I never left.
Oh,
Oh, good. You have more reliable power than Mr. Athey.
There's history. I think he's
Yeah, actually, I don't know. Hopefully you can hear me. My whole block is out. So Jeff lives in a better part of Newark than I do, I guess.
There was a question about the markings on the street. Did you want to go ahead and finish this topic of the historic center
Yeah,
pavement markings?
let me talk about this one in particular, and then we'll get to the arrows and the center line. There was a suggestion to put these markings on the street for the bicycle path. Not this one in particular, but they, I was trying to get them more compatible with our branding system and our new wayfinding signs. And they had already done an awful lot of work. So I got them to change the color from brown to more red, and I got them to change the typeface, and also to use our terminology. They use downtown. The signs in the city have, I'll say historically, for the last 10 years, used historic center. So we've got that all compatible. And they had suggested one on the street where the bike station is and the restrooms. And I'm saying we don't need to have a marking there on the street because we have a sign that's going to point out those things. There'll be a sign right there, so we don't need a sign on the street. So I'm just introducing this to council, that that suggestion that we got before, I've tried to tweak to make it more compatible with what we're already doing. And I particularly asked that they not design a sign for the street in the center of town, because we had been having a discussion with whether we wanted any marking aside from crosswalks on the street there. Do we need arrows? It seems to be working okay now. Do we need a center line? I don't know that we need one. I've never seen anybody going in the right lane or the left lane when they should be in the right lane. So it just seemed to be not absolutely necessary to have. So that's my piece of news on that topic.
So, Mr. Smith, would you summarize where they would be?
These?
Yeah, the pavement markings.
Well, on the bike lane on South Street, on Delaware at the corner of 4th and Delaware, I believe. So they'd be basically coming from Shawtown to the center of town. And so that's put on the pavement. And I think council agreed that was a good idea. And I just kind of asked to slow things down so that we could make those signs, if they're going to be on the street, compatible with the branding system, signage system that's already been developed. So I haven't really changed anything there except to ask that they not put one in the middle of Delaware Street in the courthouse area.
Would there be
Mike,
one? Go ahead.
yeah,
I would ask if there's one on Third, West Third or not. Or
West
West
West-
Third, I thought there was one on West Third going out, like you come in and you go out, but
It might be. I didn't look at them all. My main concern, again, was where we had already talked about painting in the center of town. So
I'm fine with going with your recommendations. Mr. Platt, what do you think?
I guess my thing is when the mayor presented this last meeting, it was consistency. As a bike rider, you're looking more at the road than you're looking ahead. So now I take the path from Wilmington to Delaware Street, and the last time it showed me where an air station is or a place to lock my bike up, it's not there.
well, there'd
It's
be
not on the street. I mean, I've been following these for the last 7 miles, and now all of a sudden, the most important one is gone.
That's not the only thing you've been following. There are other bike signs, and the sign that would go here, it says bike station restrooms would be a pretty good size, Mike.
But like I said, that's what we talked about last meeting. I'm fine. If I really, at this point, I'm actually a little upset. Like I said, the lines there, that asphalt down there, that big square, I think it needs some direction. If you go down there right now, we've all complained about how bad that direction is down there. And once again, we ask experts to study it. We ask experts to give recommendations, and then we just say no because we don't want paint on the street. I have a hard time understanding that. That is a horrible intersection down here.
One thing we did, we got that sign put on the stop sign right now that says oncoming traffic has right of way or something similar. That's the problem. That's dealing with the problem. The problem isn't arrows. People know traffic goes left and right. Those arrows don't tell you anything. One of them seems to tell you to go into the wrong lane. So I don't see how the arrows are needed. That's not the problem. We're already addressing the problem, which is people blowing through the stop sign and going, and not giving the right of way to traffic turning left incoming. So
I would agree.
So I won't go to my death over those arrows. I just think they're unnecessary.
I would agree, Mr. Smith, that the arrows and the bike pavement markings are excessive and you wouldn't be able to see them. But I do think the arrows, let's have Mr. Athey talk about them, because I think the problem is not only about the stop sign. The problem is people kind of get confused in that area, because I see that all the time. But Mr. Athey, could you comment on the arrows and the line there in front of the town hall?
Yeah, thank you, President Radford. You more or less just said what I was going to say. Is there, from my observations, and I think I even did call it the sea of asphalt a few minutes ago, it is just a wide open area. There's no controls whatsoever for vehicles. So, and I remember this whole thing started back to the genesis of the project, with like a traffic circle, which clearly was not, ultimately didn't solicit a lot of favor. But though the whole idea was to try to get some sort of channelization, some sort of control, some sort of direction, and little by little it kind of devolved into at least getting some striping down. And I guess I'll defer once again to the T-Squared Center that they did review the plan that I'm assuming Kim still has up on the screen at this point. I can't see it. But I guess it is your prerogative to do something otherwise if that's your choice.
I just want to point out, if you are going to do it, that the outgoing arrows, one of those arrows, it's okay. We're good. Never mind.
Okay, any other comments on the arrows or anything else shown on the two drawings? Are we all fine with this? Because this is what's going to go in. I think it looks good, and I think we've had plenty of conversations, but we want to kind of give everyone a last chance before the paint comes out. Okay? All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Athey, and hope you get power back on.
Yeah, it's, oh, I said it's not like a thunderstorm or anything, but okay, well, thank you all.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic, which is possible action on city operations budget or recovery. Mr. Barthel, do you have anything?
No, Madam President, I really don't have anything to add from what we discussed last month. Pretty much status quo at this point.
This is on COVID-19. Any council
Correct.
comments? We just put it as a placeholder because we are still in a pandemic and need to be certainly very cautious. And if something comes up, we want to have it as a topic. So I don't have anything. Anyone else have anything? Okay, let's move on. The next is a discussion of possible city flag designs. Mr. Smith.
Okay, Kim, you're up.
Okay, hold on one second.
I'm going to learn shared screen real soon here. I was on Zoom for 27 hours this past week, so I should be more expert.
Oof.
Okay, this should look a bit familiar. And I'll just mention some tweaks I did for the upper left-hand corner there, the sole shield there. I have fattened it up a bit, spread it out to fill more of the flag area. The two with the river, the two below that have not been changed. In the upper right-hand corner, that really hasn't changed, except actually that 1651 is meant to represent a sort of a ribbon, and I didn't have the capability to do that. And then below that is basically the flag that Mr. Platt was asking for, the flag with Newcastle on it. And then below, somebody else mentioned Maryland type flag. And that's what you have there. Please remember that with anything, the back of the flag will be the reverse of the front. So the shield, any lettering, any numbering will be the reverse on the back side of the flag. It won't be a two-sided flag like that would be a very expensive proposition to do that. The wonderful thing about our national flag is it looks the same from both sides. Our state flag, not so much. So that's what we have there. So I'll just, unless there are, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, please go ahead and comment as you will.
I don't know how these are numbered.
They're not. You just have to
column,
pardon me?
second column with Newcastle,
Yeah.
and the one below it, I like.
Oh, you like the Maryland flag?
The one on the bottom that breaks our shield up.
Okay.
But I probably like the Newcastle one just a little bit better. The one that says Newcastle. And I know we're not supposed to put lettering on the flag. I know this is minimal lettering.
I'm liable to get thrown out of the Flag Society, but I'm willing to take that chance. Okay, anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Well, I'll change a little bit. I like the first one, just the shield with no words, no date. The Maryland style one, I thought it sounded like a good idea, but to me that doesn't work. That's just my eye. But the shield on the large shield on the plain background, I think works pretty well. And would be somewhat the same from both sides because, there's no lettering or anything. So I think it would look good both ways.
Okay. Mr. Platt, I believe that you would
Mr.
like
Smith,
to.
I agree with Miss Leary, and actually the Maryland kind of one my wife likes, so I'm even gonna go against her. I give Maryland a lot of credit because they market their flag extremely well, which markets the state. No matter where you look, it's on every car in Maryland in some form. I wish we could do the same. And like I said, I like the one that says Newcastle.
Hey, I could.
You did a nice job on that one. Thank you.
Maryland, that's the Calvert's seal. I could look up Peter. Well, I did look up Peter Stuyvesant's seal, and it wasn't as attractive.
Right. No, I like it saying Newcastle. It identifies us, and I know there may not be words on it, but if you look at a lot of state flags and city flags, they identify as the group gets smaller. I think they have names on them. That would be the research I've looked at and different flags I've looked at. That's how I would say. Every major city in this state has their name on it. Wilmington, Dover, and Newark, they all have their name on it.
Council President Ratchford?
I would like your recommendation. You've been working on this so hard. I think they're all appropriate. Which one do you like?
Well, I like, despite the rules, I like the Newcastle words on the flag. I do. I think I like Mr. Platt's suggestion. I like it as a graphic. Will it work as a flag? Can you read it as a flag? When it's folded, when it's not spread out. That's the beauty of using symbols, as you can really tell it no matter what the wind is like or where it's hanging. Mr. Barthel, do you have a choice?
Yes. Actually, I do like the one with the name on it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Well, I got to tell you, I like Ms. Souter, I kind of thought the whole Maryland concept idea was going to look good, but I think what Maryland's got going for it is a little bit of repeat on the diagonal, and there's no repeat here. So I don't know. This is like judging, the art contest. I like, first of all, thank you for everything you did to put time into this. I do like the one on the column to the left and the top, just the shield. And I guess keeping it very simple. I like the one just like it with the words Newcastle. I think either of those would be terrific.
Well, it sounds to me like there's a preference for the one in the middle on the right side.
Okay, well, you've dodged the question, Ms.
I know.
I wanted to hear. I've been working on this too with Mr. Smith some, and so I think they're all fine choices, all 6 of them. But it seems to me from your comments, it seems most people are happy with the shield, and I guess it would be a little problem on the reverse, but not too much of a problem. There's not you would see mainly the shield, so that would be the reverse of the Newcastle. You're also going to have a problem, I guess you'd have a problem of the reverse of the shield itself, but that's apparently all flags, so.
Okay, do we need to make a resolution on this? Do we need to have a vote?
I think we probably need a vote.
Okay, Dan says yes, but offers no opinion on the flags.
Do we need a formal, it seems to me like we probably need a formal resolution as opposed to just a motion. Mr. Lasco, your thoughts? Since we're adopting a flag.
I agree. Since this is going to be a citywide proposition, I would think you should have a formal written resolution and adopt it in that fashion. But if you want my comments, I don't know if you want to hear it. I'm wondering how the flag with the wording is going to be hung. For example, if it's hanging down, like above a street or something like that, then you're going to be looking at Newcastle in a vertical sense instead of a horizontal sense. So you might want to think about that.
Suzanne Souter here. I'd like to be a little picky and say that the agenda says only discussion of possible flag.
That's correct.
So
Well,
is
yeah.
it legitimate for us to vote on it tonight, or do we have to put it on the agenda that we're going to vote on it before we can actually vote on it? And that has the advantage of giving us another month to mull it over, because I think Mr. Lasko's point is very good. Flags are sometimes hung vertically, I guess, as you will, which would mean you'd have to tip your head to read the words.
I don't know if I was heard there before, but I agree it should be a written formal resolution, and that means publicly noticed for the next meeting.
Okay, well, let's do that.
We'll do that.
And then let's move on.
Okay, thank you. All right, I appreciate all the hard work. So the next item is a motion, discussion, and vote on Resolution 2021-05. It's a resolution approving the appointment of Janet Carlin as city treasurer.
So be it.
So I have a motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna read the resolution. This is Resolution 2021-05, is a resolution approving the appointment of a city treasurer pursuant to Section 4 of the city charter. That should be of. And whereas Section 4 of Newcastle City Charter requires City Council to appoint an officer of the city who has the title of city treasurer, and whereas the newly appointed city treasurer will take office on April 10, 2021, the expiration date for the term of the current elected city treasurer, and whereas the city treasurer duties shall be as specified in the city charter and code and as otherwise determined from time to time by city council, and whereas the appointed city treasurer shall serve for an indefinite term until resignation, inability to serve, death, or until removed from office by the affirmative vote of 4 members of city council. Now therefore it be resolved that the city council hereby confirms the appointment of Janet Carlin to the office of city treasurer of the city of Newcastle effective April 10, 2021, upon the expiration of the term of the current elected city treasurer. Is Ms. Carlin on? Would you like to say anything, Ms. Carlin? Okay, well, we appreciate.
She's muted, Madam President.
Okay. So can she be unmuted?
Yes, I'm muted now. I would appreciate your confidence in me if you decide to vote me in again. I've enjoyed working with all of you, and look forward to the next whatever time it will be. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Carlin, for that. Okay, at this point, are there any other comments? I'm going to take a vote. Okay, all those in favor of Resolution 2021-05 indicate by voting aye. Aye. Opposed? Well, Ms. Carlin, you have been unanimously appointed as our city treasurer moving forward.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is a resolution approving the appointment of a city clerk pursuant to Section 4 of the city charter. That's again of the city charter. Do you have a motion to consider Resolution 2021-06?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Smith. Okay, I'm going to read this resolution. It's Resolution 2021-06, resolution approving the appointment of a city clerk pursuant to Section 4 of the city charter. Where Section 4 of the Newcastle City Charter requires City Council to appoint an officer of the city who has the title of city clerk, and whereas the newly appointed city clerk will take office on April 10, 2021, the expiration date for the term of the current elected city clerk, and whereas the city clerk's duties shall be as specified in the city charter and code, as otherwise determined from time to time by City Council, and whereas the appointed city clerk shall serve for an indefinite term until resignation, inability to serve, death, or until removed from office by the affirmative vote of 4 members of City Council. And now therefore, it be resolved that the city council hereby confirms the appointment of Kathleen Walls to the office of city clerk of the city of Newcastle effective April 10, 2021, upon the expiration of the term of the current elected city clerk. Any comments or discussion? Okay, also we're going to take a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, Ms. Walls has been appointed the city clerk moving forward after the election. Okay, thank you. Then the next item is an update and discussion on draft ordinances regarding vacant buildings. Ms. Leary, do you want to start that discussion off?
Hi, and thank you. This ordinance, the goal of this ordinance is to help minimize the time that houses are allowed to be vacant, and to encourage people who have the ability to renovate and move it along. It's mostly about boarded vacant buildings, of which we have them throughout the city, but it would also address vacant buildings that aren't boarded throughout the city. They're just vacant. I'm going to ask Mr. Losco to give the Cliff Notes version of this, as he did with me. and it's a better explanation than I can give.
All right, thank you, Ms. Leary, and members of council. So we talked about this concept of amending Chapter 141 in the December meeting, and I think primarily it was to deal with the concern over boarded properties, but also the vacant properties that have been out there for a long time. So a lot of what I put together here as a discussion draft relates to the boarded properties. For example, there in the old code, there was a requirement that an owner be given reasonable time to board up and secure an open area. And I think that we should really have a definite timeline and not leave it open-ended. So I put in a 7-day written notice from the building official to an owner who has a insecure building, and open windows, that is windows missing, doors missing, etc. If they don't do it, the city has always had the ability to board up the structure and assess the cost of that against the owner and the property. I've added in here an 18% rate of interest, since some of these boarding situations last quite a while. And in any event, it's going to take a while to rectify a chronically boarded property. The next two sections dealt with what happens if a property is boarded, but nobody is taking appropriate action to remediate the property. So in this sense, I've provided for a certified mail notice to the owner, giving them 45 days to basically bring the property up to code, have a CO issue, cure the boarding problems and any other maintenance, housing code or type maintenance type problems. If they fail to do it, there's a $500 per day fine for each day beyond the 45-day period. Extensions are available not to exceed 9 months, and on a good cause showing that you've secured a building permit, you're taking active steps to do the remediation work. So this is very aggressive, but the idea is to assess fines that grow to a significant degree for those chronically boarded properties, so that it is worthwhile for the city to pursue a munition action against the property and put it in the hands of an owner who will do the appropriate repairs. So what happens when you take a property like that to sheriff's sale and somebody buys a boarded property? Well, that's the next section there, section D of new language, and it's a similar situation. Once they have acquired record title to the property, the building official would again send them that 45-day notice letter saying, get on the stick, pull your building permits, and start the rehabilitation process to bring it up to code. And again, the same extension of up to 9 months is available for really problem properties that will take time to correct, and there are some of those. But failing to get the extension or failing to remediate the property again results in the $500 a day fines, which are treated as a tax lien and can be pursued by munition. So this was the hammer that was discussed at the December meeting and suggested as a means of getting better control over chronically boarded up properties. I mentioned the 9-month extension as a possibility already. I mentioned also in here in this draft that anybody who feels aggrieved by the fines assessed, that we haven't notified them properly or haven't otherwise accommodated an extension request, they can appeal to the Board of Building Appeals, which of course now is really the Board of Adjustment. Aside from that, we changed the definition of what is a vacant property under section 141.19. And that had previously contained an exception, a property that was not deemed vacant if it was basically on the market. And what we had seen in a couple of cases is abusive situations where somebody would have a vacant property, not necessarily boarded up, but vacant. They haven't registered it, or maybe they have registered it and it's time to start fining them. And what they do is they put the property on the market for 30 or 60 days, but aren't seriously attempting to sell it. And it then comes off the market, it remains vacant, and we go on a merry-go-round where they put it on the market, take it off the market. So we've removed that particular provision. Otherwise, I've modernized a bit the vacant property registration information to require not just valid addresses, but also telephone numbers, email addresses, and have it relate not just to corporations, but to limited liability companies and other types of entities, business entities. There was also a concern from our December meeting about inspecting properties that are vacant. They may be registered, they may be paying their annual fee for registration, but they also, nobody knows what's going on inside. Is there deteriorating conditions that might cause fire or safety issues for neighboring properties and the building itself? So I added a section that allowed for any property that's registered, that's vacant, whether registered or not, for more than 2 years should be subject to inspection by the building official. And also stated if the building official's denied entry, he can apply for a warrant from the Justice of the Peace for purposes of entering. In my talk with Ms. Leary this afternoon, we talked about some of these fines for vacant properties. So now we're talking about properties that are not boarded, but they are vacant. The first year, there's no fee. The second year, there's a $500 fee. For a third year, it's $1,000, and it increases by $1,000 or so a year. But one issue is perhaps those registration fees aren't strong enough to induce people to render a property occupied, make it occupied. And I think there's a philosophical decision that the council will need to decide. Is it okay for somebody who is maintaining a property fully up to code, where the taxes are being paid, it may have been inspected and things have been remedied, but they're just keeping it vacant for whatever personal reason? Should they be subject to these greater fees? Is it in the common good or the public good to assess fees that punish people for keeping their perfectly code compliant property vacant? And that's a philosophical decision only council can reach. I'm open for questions.
I had a question. I noticed when you discuss vacancies for over a year, you give an exception for things like illness, vacations, military service, sabbatical, compassionate care, or other similar situations where they intend to return. I know overseas deployments for the military tend not to exceed a year, but some people get an assignment, to another base or duty station for more than a year, even though they're still within the United States. And do we really want to penalize people serving in the military if, as you say, they keep their house up to code, but just choose not to rent it or have someone else live there in their absence? So I didn't know if we wanted to change anything about that exception. And what was and it says they have to register if it's going to be vacant for more than 45 days. Well, people who go to Florida for 3 to 6 months in the wintertime, that's more than 45 days. So I don't know if that time frame is too short for the snowbird situation. And finally, I'll repeat my original question about the 45 days for to get things repaired. That seems pretty short. And I know they can apply for an exception, but I just wonder if we're not discouraging people from buying a damaged property, or because they feel that they're going to be rushed to get the work done on it. And therefore we defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do, which is get responsible owners into these properties.
All good points. Like I said, this was a discussion draft. I was trying to be aggressive about getting these things rectified, and that's why the short fuse.
As for snowbirds, working backwards, you know, the vacant, it's dealing with a home that's been vacant for coming on a year and longer. So anyone who's a snowbird, I don't think that really applies to.
There's a requirement to register if it's going to be vacant for more than 45 days.
Okay, so how do we word that, Mr.
Well,
Lawson?
I mean, what's the purpose of the registration? Is it to alert the police that it's a vacant house for 3 months while the person's in Arizona or Florida, and therefore they maybe drive by a few, you know, just in case every once in a while? Or is it meant to be more punitive?
In my opinion, it's for both those reasons you mentioned, but also to make certain that the property is on our radar screen so that if it continues to be vacant for that 1 year period, we send them a bill.
Another issue with that, in that vacancy is somebody going on vacation that it seems like, okay, they register it, they can come back for 1 week in a year and then go on vacation all of the next year and come back for a week, the way it seems to be worded. And I think that gets to the point you were talking about, is vacant buildings. Buildings can remain vacant for a long time, even with this wording. And is that the problem we're trying to solve? I guess that's the philosophical question.
Yeah, I didn't have in mind people going away for vacation and their house being empty. What is snowbird issues? We're talking about, I think we know what kind of homes we're talking about that are vacant and boarded. They've been left, they're derelict.
Well, that's not what this says. It's a definition of what it means to be vacant. That's, you know, if we're, and it seems to, are we trying to fill houses that are vacant, or are we just trying to fix houses that are derelict? You know, the one, I think the one issue on Delaware Street at 4th Street kind of fits that definition. We don't necessarily know what's going on inside, but it's vacant at long periods of time. And somebody can come back for, you know, 2 days in a year, and it's no longer considered vacant.
I guess my question being, Mr. Lasko alluded to this, and I'll just take a little bit further. What right do we have as a government to say, if I purchase a house and choose not to live in it, and I pay my utilities, I keep it up, the grass is cut, and just because I choose not to live there, that is a vacant building. I don't know why I have to register that. It's my property. I'm paying my utilities, I'm paying my taxes. And in my mind, it's not the government's right to tell me what to do. If it's boarded up, that's another thing. It's an eyesore, it's a safety hazard. But the property's kept up to minimal standards. I don't understand this whole vacancy thing. I honestly don't.
Well, I tend to agree with you on a lot of those points, but I'll play devil's advocate here and say that a vacant property is more prone to be broken into by vagrants, more prone to be the object of, firebugs, people who are committing arson. They're more prone to be ignored for general exterior maintenance. Anything from having gutters cleaned out so that the gutters start falling down or that the soffits start rotting, and it creates an eyesore and can lead to a blighted condition. But your example of, if I own a vacant property and I'm maintaining it beautifully per code, should I have to do anything more than register it? Yeah, that's a great question. Only council can decide that.
Right, and I mean, there's properties people live in that probably should be registered as vacant. I mean, that aren't kept up. No, we've had this discussion. I mean, we've got people with 6, 8 cars, boats, trash, you name it. And we're not addressing that, but we're personally attacking people's property that we're making a judgment whether.
We're not personally attacking people's property.
What this ordinance does, because like I said, if I decide to buy a house as an investment and I decide I want to just let it sit on it for a year, see what happens, that's my right. I shouldn't even have to tell the city that.
Oh, I think the city needs to know about a vacant property. It's established that for a house to be kept up in an acceptable condition, it requires either a resident or somebody keeping an eye on that property, or it could be a derelict property. That could happen in the house next to you. Wouldn't you want the city to know if a house next to you was going to be vacant for a long time? And that invites trouble.
Well, yes, I agree with that, but it's not my business either. I do know that if a house is vacant, you can't get homeowners insurance. So I mean, there's a lot of different things to look at. I just struggle with the overreach, and to me, there's a certain amount of overreach. If the property's in disrepair, that's one thing, and that's all I'm going to say. The other comment here is, I said at the December meeting, I think it should be a year. If a property is boarded up, odds are it's going to have structural problems. Why wait 2 years to do it? Why not do it in a year? Sooner the better.
So
that property is an obvious problem.
We already do a lot of this. I'm just looking to tighten it up. Okay, we already the register for vacant property. None of that's changing. I don't think somebody who is a snowbird, or it even says in here, military. I think those are pretty clear. And maybe it's clear in my head and not yours, but I mean, those are clear exceptions. It's easy. Ms. Souter brought up, if a military is deployed for longer than a year, 2 years, they have orders. The government already covers them for stuff like that, so they can present their orders.
Right, they're exempt.
Saying I'm going to be in Germany for 2 years, and we have to go, and we go, okay. I'm sure somebody may be watching their house. We would hope they're watching their house, but we're not necessarily talking about those. We're talking about properties that have sat for years and are becoming or already are derelict, and they may be boarded or not boarded, and most of them are boarded. But so we're talking about tightening the time frame. Is 45 days long enough? I think 45 days is long enough to say, hey, I think I'm going to do this, but they're likely going to have to ask for an extension if they got to go to hack, if they got to do some other things.
That's for a house that's in disrepair. I'm talking about a house that's in living conditions. It's normal. I mean, this says building structures. Do we take all the garages that aren't being used in the city and start then?
What garage is not being used?
Well, I'm saying, I don't know. I'm throwing it out there.
But I do agree.
It says any building or structure.
Okay, I do agree with you about decreasing it from 2 years to 1 year. So,
The inspections you made.
yes.
And another issue, I guess, is you can see what a derelict property looks from the outside, but if it has a leak in the roof,
You don't see it.
you don't see it. So what happens there?
If I got a leak in my roof, you don't see it.
I know,
Because
but
you're not looking.
I see all the points. I just think it's a little bit of an overreach. And like Mr. Roscoe said, this is open for discussion and,
Right.
you
But
know,
like I'm pointing out, we already do most of this. We're just looking to tighten it up. So you think that tightening it up is overreach?
you're saying any property. I don't, you know something, no, never mind. Go ahead.
I'd like to
Good.
hear Mr. Bergstrom's opinion on some of this, since he deals with these properties.
You know the game Whack-A-Mole?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we feel like we're playing sometimes. But our inventory of vacant buildings has been steadily decreasing over the years. And especially, we're not in bad shape now, but there are still about 20 buildings that you can say are vacant in town. That's out of better than 2,000 parcels we've got. So things aren't so bad, but it's important to have the tools to grab the really bad ones. We've got two fires jobs right now, the two homes that are vacant because of fire damage. One of them's only a week or two old, and one of them's almost a year old now, or about a year old. So every one of them's different, but you got to have the tools to go get them. And aggressively, for some properties, $500 a year per year is not enough. And that's what you sent Dan off to address, I think. And I think he did a great job on this proposed ordinance. This is a good time, a good ordinance to start talking about and see what you really want to accomplish.
Mr. Barthel, do you have comments?
Well, yeah, I do. I think if you look at the information you were provided by Furio on vacant properties, Jeff said somewhere around 20 or so, but I think if you look at them, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that have been vacant over 4 years. And I mean, I'm not going to get into the details on all of them, but the majority of them, I believe, are registered. I mean, I know there's, and right off the top of the bat is the one you've been talking about on Delaware Street. I mean, they have been registered. You know, I personally think that, as you pointed out, Mrs. Leary, we do have the tools and we have been able to enforce these properties. The vacant properties and the boarded up properties have declined considerably over the last number of years because we've had a program to do that. Now, to your point about tightening it up, I absolutely do think for vacant buildings is where I would think we have more of a problem. And I think that if you've got properties that boarded up, if you've got properties that are going to be vacant for a longer period of time, I don't have a problem with wanting to get into those properties and inspect to see if you have the roof leaking. If nobody's in there for 4 years, we should know that. Okay, if nobody's in that building for a few years, we should probably know that, because obviously that can have if it continues to leak. Well, actually, we had that problem with a vacant building in that situation, that had we been able to get into it sooner, we would have been able to identify the vacant or the leak and the issues that were happening to the attached property. But in general, for vacant buildings, I don't believe that we have that much of a huge issue. Let me put it that way. But I do agree that if you can tighten those reins a little bit, allow us to get access to the vacant properties, maybe period. We really don't have that ability to do it now, and then address the boarded up properties as you're suggesting. I think that will I think that kind of takes care of the issue. I don't know if that answers your question but
No, it's your opinion, and I'm interested in hearing that. But yeah, I'm just hoping to tighten it up a little bit. Maybe some people just need a little encouragement. And of course, you have those boarded properties where you can't find family or anything like that. They're just sitting there. So,
well, and to your point, you've got, and again, if you look at the information provided by Furio, right now we've got 5 boarded up properties. One is going to sheriff's sale, and I believe that would have gone to sheriff's sale on West 5th Street sooner had the sheriff's sale not been stayed because of COVID. And then we've got another one, which I think Jeff pointed out at Moore Avenue, which just became boarded up.
Yeah.
Right. So again, the goal is to get to 0 if possible. But I think that in general, again, if you look at where we are, 8 years ago, this number was exceptionally higher than this for vacant properties and for boarded and for, or I'm sorry, for vacant and for boarded up properties. So I think if you tighten it a little bit, I think you'll get the result that you're looking for. But I also think you have to be careful, you know, from a property rights person, you know, what right do we have if somebody's taking care of their property? Those people have been there vacant for 4 years and they're taking care of the exterior and everything is being done. We're enforcing if there are issues. The big question then becomes, how do you just get inside to make sure that there's no, you know, there are no leaks, that kind of thing. But I think that addresses what you're trying to do.
Thank you.
So I guess.
This is Mr. Laska, very quickly. If I take from this discussion, tightening it up a little further, what I'm hearing are two things that I think everybody agrees upon, and that is somebody with a boarded property should be given more than 45 days at the outset to cure the problem after notice. And perhaps, and this is a suggestion, on the vacant property side, so not boarded, but vacant, there are relatively modest fees for the first up to 3 years. No fee the first year, 500, and 1,000 for the second year of vacancy. Third year, I'm sorry, vacancy. But perhaps after 3 years, maybe it should step up more aggressively than it does now to deal with these properties that are really chronically vacant, where you either can't find the owners are MIA, or the property is obviously being neglected. Is that a solution that council thinks is a good compromise?
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also to change the from 2 years inspection down to 1.
Got that.
And get rid of any discrimination against, you know, people that own 2 homes or snowbirds or whatever. Because I think your vacancy really occurs when you hit a year. The really
the definition, yeah, the definition does talk where in the area where it talks about military deployments. It also talks about vacations. So I think that, but I could be more clear on that. I agree. So I'll work on that too.
Because that's not what we're really going. I think the boarded ones are the ones that bother me the most. I think expanding that time, doing the 1-year inspection so we get in. And if there's anything we need to do in case we do have a situation where, you know, you may have, I can remember one home where there was, you know, it was a situation of an estate and some confusion. Well, one home, the next door home was causing two was causing damage to the next house to it. So I think that if there's anything we can do to prevent, you know, encroachment on an attached home, that would be very good.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Laska, for this draft.
Mr. Laska, just a tiny thing on section E, the first paragraph. I think there's a typo in the next to last line. If is crossed out. That's all.
Trying to find where you're referring to specifically.
Section E, it says, and down at the bottom, shall exceed 9 months, act, and it crossed out an if. I think it means the if should be there, if active rehabilitation of the building or structure is ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Ms. Leary, do you want to go have another discussion next month, or you want to go reading an ordinance?
No, I think I'd like to see the draft rewritten, and if
okay,
can
we'll
we
have
do
another
discussion and possible vote, or an ordinance.
I think it could be set up for first reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right, because we have to have a hearing. So.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for all the hard
Thank
work.
you.
The next item we have is a motion, discussion, and vote on resolution 2021-07 is to make my appointment for Connie Reese to fill out the remaining term of Mary Ann Cavan. And so at this point, I need a motion to consider.
So moved.
Second,
Now I'm going to read the resolution. We'll go from there. Resolution 2021-07, a resolution approving the appointment of Connie Reese to the Board of Elections. Whereas the Newcastle City Charter details that the responsibility for conducting all municipal elections in the city of Newcastle shall be vested with the Board of Elections. And whereas the charter further provides that each member of the city council shall appoint one qualified elector who is also a resident of the city to serve as a member of said board. And whereas there is currently one vacated position on the Board of Elections. And whereas the city council proposes to confirm the appointment of Connie Reese to complete the unfulfilled term of Mary Ann Cavan, with that term ending on November 9, 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that the city council hereby confirms the appointment of the following persons to the Board of Election. Connie Reese, appointed by council president, term ending November 9, 2024. And I'm certainly excited that Connie's willing to serve. She has lots of experience and has, lived here for 47 years and been very, very involved in the city. So Ms. Reese, do you happen to be here this evening?
She wasn't able to be at the meeting tonight.
Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate her willingness to serve. So unless there are any other comments, we'll have a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And so opposed? Okay, so she's been unanimously nominated to the Board of Elections. So that's a great thing. Next is a motion, discussion, and vote on Resolution 2021-08, a resolution approving a minor subdivision at 100 Steel Drive, parcel number 21-005.00-033 and 150 Lucas Drive, parcel number 21-022.00-002. Do you have a motion to consider this resolution?
so moved.
A second. Okay, I'm going to read the resolution. I have some discussion. This is Resolution 2021-08. It's a resolution approving a minor subdivision at 100 Steel Drive, parcel number 21-005.00-033 and 150 Lucas Drive, parcel number 21-022.000-002. Whereas Mark Ziegler, PE of McBride and Ziegler, has applied to the Council of Newcastle for minor subdivision approval for property owned by Joliet Street Real Estate LLC located at 100 Steel Drive, known as tax parcel 21-005.00-033 and the adjacent portion of the tax parcel number 21-022.00-002 owned by Parkway Gravel Inc. within the city limits. And whereas the Planning Commission on January 25, 2021 has reviewed the application under the terms of the subdivision regulations and determined that the application is conformity with the subdivision regulations of the city of Newcastle and has recommended to City Council that the subdivision be approved. And whereas the council determines the application meets the requirements necessary for the approval of this subdivision as shown on the attached Exhibit A, now therefore be it resolved that the application for minor subdivision approval for property owned by Joliet Street Real Estate LLC located at 100 Steel Drive, known as tax parcel 21-005.00-033 and the adjacent portion of tax parcel 21-022.00-002 owned by Parkway Gravel Inc. within the city limits as shown here in Exhibit A, reflecting such subdivision is approved and such plat shall be entitled to be recorded in the office of the Newcastle County Recorder of Deeds. This has gone for the Planning Commission and has been approved and endorsed by the Planning Commission Chair. And I think also we have Mr. Ziegler here, if you would like to make a statement.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Basically everything you said was correct. The plan is not creating any new parcels. It's adjusting a property line in order to accommodate an access issue. The lane is actually to 100 Steel Drive located on Parkway Gravel, and the lack of access got discovered on an Alta survey. So we're adjusting the property line so that the access is on 100 Steel Drive, and it also provides access to Holcomb Lane, which has three utilities: electric, sewer, and water. So we've created an easement, so City of Newcastle and Newcastle County have access through it also. So it solves a lot of problems. There was an error that got picked up on an Alta survey, and now this corrects the problem.
So thank you. So Mr. Bergstrom, do you have any comments on this?
No, the city planner and I both reviewed it carefully, and this is a good thing. This is just a minor resub to fix a previous error.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Ziegler or Mr. Bergstrom?
Suzanne Satter, I have one question. I noticed that the Planning Commission had some technical points that they raised about access. And for example, it says that they need to more clearly define the right-of-way for Steel Drive. And they need to more clearly define the lot line and the issue of eliminating viable access to another parcel. Have all those issues been addressed and corrected?
Yes, they have. For the major part, you can see it in a big note in the bottom left-hand corner of the plan.
Correct.
Thank you.
This is President Ratcher. One more question. This still does not allow truck traffic through Buttonwood. Is that correct?
Right, has nothing to do with that at all.
Okay, thank you. Just because I know that's a sensitive issue. Okay, any other comments? Okay, are we ready for a vote then for Resolution 2021-08? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the resolution has passed unanimously, and thanks for clearing all this up. And thank you, Mr. Ziegler, for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay, last item in the agenda is a discussion on the DelDOT Route 9 Master Plan first final mile freight study. And that's important because they're asking for comments in a couple of days. They are doing, I think Senator Poor mentioned that DelDOT's doing some truck studies, and they are doing multiple studies. One, they did a Port of Wilmington study, and that's complete. And then they're doing two other studies. One is to look at what you would call the freight network, and it's how trucks get from one, to the major arteries like to 95 to Route 13. Obviously, they come from other locations and like maybe an industrial park. And they also go to other locations like a delivery for a restaurant. So we need to give any comments that we might have regarding the freight network on Route 9. Also, their third component of that they're studying is truck parking. That's in relationship to where could trucks park. For instance, there's apparently a law that a truck driver was killed or something because they were sleeping in their truck. So there's some concern about safe places for trucks to park. That would be coming up later, but I thought I would raise that question tonight just to see if there are any things I'm not aware of. I'm not aware that we have an issue in our city on truck parking. So at this point, I'd like to ask if there are any comments on the freight network going through the city of Newcastle.
Where can we access the study? I'm sure you probably gave us a link somewhere.
It's it's online, but I'll make sure that I send that. It's I think I did send it. It's basically.
Yes, she sent some. Ms. Ratchford sent us some background information, and within that there is a link.
Okay.
But
so yeah, that would be the link that you could go on and see what they're studying. They're still in the middle of a study, so they don't have any final conclusions. They're kind of like the Newcastle study, which is they've kind of completed task one, which is more background information. But they're so I think if this has been a topic many times for city council, and so I think if there's things that, for instance, some things you could want that we're going to have consolidated in our comments would be things like certainly from a land use standpoint, we've had numerous complaints from Dobbinsville and Washington Park about noise and vibrations in the corridor because these are residential sections and many homes are close to the road. Also some in Moore's Lane, but some of that I think has been corrected. We've had some safety issues when the trucks go the wrong place. So I think that's certainly something. Other thoughts people have?
I'm concerned that I've noticed an increase in flooding, increasing the frequency of the flooding on Route 9, just south of Dobbinsville, shortly before the bridge over, I don't know, is that Army Creek, that creek that cuts in there?
Yeah.
It used to be that it only flooded when we had like a major storm, lots of rain, that kind of thing. And now I've noticed that it floods even when we've had minor rainstorms. Another time when I noticed it flooding in the past is if there was a strong east wind, which, pushed the river against our shoreline. And now I've noticed flooding when that was not the case. The only thing I've been able to tie it to is every time because when I walk out on the river walk, if you go all the way out, you can see it if it's flooded, or you can hear the cars splashing through it and see the wake they kick up if it's really flooded. Is it seems to happen at high tide. And I think I haven't kept track, but I think it's mostly high tide during a full moon when tides are slightly higher. But if it's that much, if it floods just from that slight difference, I think it needs to be dealt with. And the last we knew from DelDOT, they weren't planning to do anything about that until 2030.
Well,
I don't think we can wait that long, because particularly with the increase of trucks from the industrial parks on the other side of the bridge. And I've observed many large trucks going through there, and they throw up quite a wake. And if there's a car headed the other direction, it could be a problem.
There's a project this year in their budget for $1 million for Route 9. That's not going to do much. And then 10 years from now, 10 years from now, there's the $10 million project. I really would like to know what the $1 million project is supposed to get us.
Just, I have a question.
Jeff, do you know?
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. Are we supposed to respond individually, or is the city going to make a single response for the entire city based on our comments tonight?
The city, they preferred a single response, so that's why I wanted to put it on the agenda.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, so Mr. Barthel, make sure we get a consolidated response. At this point, I want anyone to throw out any comments or concerns, and also the chief, or, or Mr. Bergstrom or Mr. Barthel. Do you have anything you'd like to share of concerns about the freight network along Route 9?
Madam President, I'd like to jump in here. Between the northern part of our city and Twin Spans, there's an enormous amount of truck traffic. I brought this up months ago. There's a lot of, it's an industrial park. I fully understand that, but there's also probably 6 dozen houses along that road from Twin Spans up to Buttonwood.
So is your concern noise and vibration?
But just noise, vibration, and just the volume even. And, I said this back, I know it's a state road, but there's really no markings for speed on that road. There's one sign when you come over the dike, and then after that, it's kind of wishy-washy. It's very vague, put it that way.
Okay.
There seems to be a lot of truck traffic just, in the area of the shopping center, right along Ferry Cutoff, probably driven by the same location Mr. Platt mentions, but overall, it seems like truck traffic has increased. Are they keeping numbers, Linda? Have they done counts, 10 years ago versus now, or what the impact is?
I know that they have done some in our city about truck traffic. I don't know if they've done it all along Route 9. I would assume they have, but we'll raise that question too. Have you done counts? Anything from the chief or Mr. Bergstrom? Any comments?
One common denominator that's existed through all of this is the lack of a definition of local delivery. That's an issue that we tried to visit. It's almost, I don't know how relevant it is now since we're surrounded by so many industrial parks, but there's no question that a lot of these trucks are using this as a throughway to get from point A to point B, and they're not stopping in the city. The argument became local delivery, and some definitions were pushing the definition of local delivery far outside of the city. So I think that should be, and nobody can really provide, a good definition. So I really think that is something we need, is define local delivery, and what authority do municipalities have to enforce local delivery laws. We recognize that it's a state maintained road. We recognize we can't redirect the traffic. But if you're coming from, somewhere south and you're coming up Route 9 to get to 295, or even Terminal Avenue, is that a local delivery? That's my thought.
Good point. Any other comments we want to pass along? And then this topic will come up again tomorrow night at the Newcastle topic, so we'll get some, so that'll be good. That'll come up then. Also, truck parking. I don't know that we have an issue. I mean, if someone parks in the middle of our city on one of our regular, city streets, I know the police promptly give them a ticket. So I'm not worried about those. And I think all the other truck parking is on industrial park locations. Any other comments? Mr. Mayor, you have a comment?
Thank you. So, yeah, I've noticed there are a couple of poultry trucks that park just off 273. I think that's Old Churchman's. Over by CB Joe's, there's typically a Mount Air truck over there. I mean, so there are people who are parking and sometimes dropping and leaving, and maybe they've got an agreement that that's okay to do. But I would worry that some of the industrial parks could become a place where truckers seek rest. You write off a couple of interstate highways. I also think it's important to express to DelDOT that which we already all know. I mean, I don't believe that, with UPS being where they are, that big facility that they now have invested in off Hamburg Road, we're grateful for the jobs. But, Route 9 and certainly 7th Street was never intended to be a pass through for 18-wheelers. And I must tell you, I agree with the people of Dobbinsville and the people who live in the Garrison, the people who live in the Helm and Deemer's Landing, and the people who live up and down Washington Street. I mean, it's constant. And I think that's an issue. Ferry Cutoff, similarly, fairly narrow, just 2-lane road. The port is scheduled to be a top 10 port by the end of the decade. It's currently ranked number 19 in the nation in terms of traffic, port traffic. So if you make it a top 10 port, it's going to exponentially increase truck traffic in and around the entire area of northeastern Newcastle County. It just stands to reason. And we are within shouting distance of Terminal Avenue. So I would encourage you to look at a lot of we have a lot of residential streets that are frankly being used for bypass purposes. And the more we can really make them residential streets as they were intended, I think the better for all of us. Thank you.
I would just like to mention on the topic of UPS, when Valerie and I did our visit to Dobbinsville, and we discussed trucks, of course, among other things, but I did ask if UPS was an issue. Were they cutting through Dobbinsville? And surprisingly, they said no, that UPS hasn't been a problem since they completed that facility.
And I'd say to Mr. Smith, he's absolutely right. I mean, they've done a good job, as is the refinery. They've been pretty good neighbors. Not so much for the Postal Service and the postal contractors.
The DelDOT has put a lot of signs. Mr. Smith and I talked about this the other day. They've improved the signage, trying to direct them. It's it still goes back to the chief's comment about local delivery, but it has helped some in terms of steering them up down Hamburg Road or other locations. So any other comments you want to pass along that Ms. Rathel will summarize for us?
Madam President, I know it's not standard, but there's been two people with their hands up pretty much the whole meeting. If they sat through the meeting, maybe we should give them each 2 minutes to say what they have.
They didn't, were their hands up during the public comment section?
They weren't. I mean, I guess something came up for them when they were here. One just, yeah, there's still two here. I mean, they sat through the whole meeting. I just,
Okay.
it's up to you.
Okay, that's fine. Who?
Give them each 2 minutes and, I don't know how, I know it's been a long meeting, but
Okay, we can.
you hear from the people.
certainly- Yeah, we certainly do appreciate them sitting through the whole meeting, so.
Okay.
No, I didn't want to.
I have Mr. Plant. I think he had his hand up first, so I'll bring him in.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Plant, was your hand up first?
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Plant, we're waiting to hear from you.
Hello. So sorry, I didn't know I could actually speak. No, my point was more about the empty houses, particularly the boarded up houses. I think they're two different things. I mean, I think there's one that's unsightly. As someone that lives next door to a boarded up house, but also someone that owns two houses and has for a year because it's been boarded up. I mean, I just think that they're two very different subjects. And I just had a perspective on both, and I just wanted to share that the frustration with the boarded up house is that as a resident, I feel that there's never been any way of me finding out the status or what's happening or anything else. And I've had to live next door to a house that's, like I say, boarded up. I had problems with skunks, and the city was helpful. There's glass. I mean, there's all sorts of things happening about that. But then on the flip side, I've lived in a different house and I've had an empty house arguably for a year. So I wouldn't want to be penalized for that as well. So that was my point. I just think that they're two very separate things. A boarded up house that's obviously derelict and a danger versus somebody that's not living in a house. That's my only point. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to share that. So who is the other person that has their hands up?
Mr. Simpers.
Okay, Mr. Simpers, go ahead.
I got to see where he went.
Well, he's.
I don't see him in the meeting anymore.
It looks like he left. I'll make a motion to adjourn it if we're done.
Second,
Second,
all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
aye,
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dan.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care all.
Bye, thank you.